start at midnight. My first delivery is supposed to be at 4 a.m. And then, usually by the end of the day, like right now it's almost 11 a.m. and I still have one more stop, but they would prefer, in an ideal, world, according to the people in charge, like I would never be seen. They'd rather have all the deliveries in the middle of the night, before the customers get there. And, partially for safety, but also just because they'd rather not have you in the way of the real customers. And it made me think, like, what job do they actually want to see? Like, when I was 19, I had a job for a short time as a car salesman, because I'll just hire young